Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is the story about Naruto. What if Naruto has steel release? Part 8. Hope you'll enjoy this video. So before we start, please do support for more awesome content and also hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. And also support the creator of this fanfic. I have created many playlists, check it out in the channel. So let's start the video. After a quick search of the inn, Naruto found two of Team 7's members on the roof terrace. Kiba and Hinata stood by the railing, looking out over the forest behind the building and talking quietly with each other. Naruto approached them slowly, taking note of the quick whispered words the two exchanged as they turned away from the railing to face him. He couldn't make out what they said, however. "Hey guys," he said. "Naruto-kun," Hinata replied. Kiba didn't say anything. Instead, he took half a step to put his body partially in front of Hinata. Naruto saw that the taller boy's body posture was slightly tense, as if ready to react at a moment's notice. The blonde stopped in his tracks. "I'm not here to fight, I just want to talk." The dog user relaxed some of the tension in his shoulders but didn't move away from his protective position in front of the Hyuga heiress. "What about?" Kiba asked. Having become accustomed to detecting the very small changes in tone that accompanied his bug-using teammates' typically controlled manner of speech, Naruto picked up on the slightly edged undertone in the dog user's voice. He interpreted it as a suspicion of his words. The blonde held his hands up and away from his body with palms open. "I'm here to apologize for what happened earlier." Hinata put a hand on Kiba's elbow, lightly pushing him back to the side. Naruto saw that the remaining tension in the dog user's body faded away at the gesture. "Sorry about Kiba," Hinata said. "I told him I didn't think you had any bad intentions, but he gets overprotective sometimes." Naruto dropped his hands. "I couldn't blame you guys, even if you thought that way. What I did was stupid. I realize now that Sasuke was deliberately goading me on. I shouldn't have taken the bait like that." "It's no big deal," Kiba said with a casual shrug, his body language having changed now that he no longer perceived the blonde as a potential threat. "Everyone was okay in the end." "It could have been a big deal though," Naruto replied. "I'm not going to make excuses for my actions. I accept responsibility for what I did. I just wanted to ask you guys not to hold it against my teammates." Shino and Haku reacted because they thought I was in trouble. "They didn't have any intention of getting into a fight with you." Hinata smiled at Naruto's words. "We moved to back up Sasuke-kun too, so I can't blame them for what they did. I'm just thankful it ended without a serious incident. It wasn't really your fault either. Sasuke can be a total bastard when he puts his mind to it," Kiba added. "You can say that again," the blonde mumbled in a low tone of voice, though loud enough for the other two to hear. "Look," Kiba said as he moved one arm in a vague outward gesture. "Maybe it's not my place. You and Sasuke have had this thing about each other for years. I don't know whether to call it a rivalry or a feud. But he has a reason for acting the way he does." Naruto turned to the taller boy with a puzzled expression. Kiba's statement about his relationship with Sasuke, as well as Hinata's lack of surprise at the words, caught him off guard. Though it was true that he didn't like the Uchiha prodigy, he had never really thought of himself as being in a feud or rivalry with the black-haired boy. He supposed it was possible, though, that his own feelings against Sasuke, as well as his lack of interaction with his classmates for the last 2 years, had blinded him to how others saw things in this matter. In fact, Naruto had always considered Kiba to be Sasuke's rival, at least after returning to the academy 2 years ago. He had never known the dog user well enough to count him as a friend, but he did remember that during their academy days there was no love lost between Kiba and Sasuke. They were the top two in Jutsu, their personalities were polar opposites in many ways, and during classes the dog user made it a point to challenge the Uchiha as often as possible. That was why Naruto was also surprised that the dog user was defending his teammate. "I don't remember you ever being friends with Sasuke in the academy," Naruto commented, saying the words with a quizzical tone. "It's complicated," Kiba replied while making a face. "He can be a real jerk when he wants to be, but underneath it all he's not that bad a guy. All we saw during our academy days was the arrogant bastard mask. It wasn't until I spent some time getting to know him after graduation that I saw why he acts that way." Naruto folded his arms in front of him and leaned against a nearby wall. "What do you mean?" Kiba leaned back as well, putting his back against the railing and resting his elbows on top of it. "You know the Uchiha massacre?" "Just the basics, someone wiped out the entire clan except Sasuke," Naruto replied. "The massacre had occurred during his coma." When he woke up, with the way everyone tiptoed around the incident, he hadn't been able to learn much more. Kiba nodded. It wasn't just anyone though, it was his brother. Uchiha Itachi was the genius of the family. He graduated from the academy at 7, made Chunin at 10, and was an Anbu captain 3 years after that. The blonde's eyebrows rose at Kiba's words. He'd never heard of anything like it. If he remembered his academy lessons correctly, even the 4th Hokage didn't graduate from the academy until he was 10. Anyway, you can see how losing his whole family like that would affect him? The dog user asked. Naruto nodded after a few seconds of thought. He still didn't like Sasuke, but could sympathize with the black-haired boy's situation a bit. That's not all though, Kiba continued. I mean, you're an orphan, and you turned out okay, right? I guess, Naruto replied noncommittally. His feelings about growing up without any family were considerably more complicated, but he felt neither the need nor the desire to share them with Kiba. Maybe if that was the end of it, he could eventually get over what happened. But the villagers just keep bringing it up. During our academy days he kept to himself just as much as you did, so I don't think anyone our age knew about it at the time. Until you've seen it firsthand, I don't think you can understand just how much it affects him. I didn't really know until I started spending a lot of time with him as a teammate. How do the villagers treat him? Naruto asked. It's hard to describe, the brown-haired Inuzuka began, but his voice trailed off as he struggled to find the right words. I think what Kiba's trying to say is that everyone sees Sasuke-kun through the lens of that one event, Hinata interjected in a somewhat hesitant tone. The brown-haired Inuzuka snapped his fingers. Yeah. It's like that's all he is to them. I'm not really following what you're saying, the blonde said with a confused shake of his head. Whenever anyone in the village talks to him, it's like everything they say has to do with the massacre in some way. There are people who, I dunno, almost worship him I guess, and keep bringing up how he's the last Uchiha and needs to rebuild his clan back to its former glory. I don't really see how that's so bad, Naruto remarked. So he has the adults treating him like the fan club in the academy did? Hinata shook her head. It's not like that, the dark-haired Hyuga heiress said quietly. When people have great expectations of you, there's a lot of pressure to meet them. It can be worse than growing up with no one expecting anything of you. If you say so, Naruto replied, making only a half-hearted attempt to hide the doubt in his voice. With the exception of the Hokage, for the majority of the blonde's life he didn't recall anyone expecting anything of him but failure. He couldn't really relate to what Hinata was saying. He supposed it was possible, though, that she understood something like that better than he did given her status as the heir of the Hyuga clan. There are also other points of view, Hinata continued, her tone of voice gaining more confidence as she saw that Naruto wasn't about to dispute what she said. Some villagers looked down on him, thinking that the only reason his brother would have left him alive is because Sasuke-kun could never grow strong enough to be a threat to him. Others treat him with coldness because they think that he'll eventually turn on the village just like his brother did. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the Hyuga heiress's words. I always thought that everyone treated Sasuke like some kind of royalty. I never really considered that there could be other points of view, the blonde admitted. I didn't know either until after teaming up with him, Kiba said. The brown-haired Inuzuka scratched at his face for a moment before continuing. I'm not trying to justify what he did. He was definitely being a jerk back there, and I can understand why you got mad. But he's a teammate and a friend, and even if they sometimes do things you don't agree with, you have to stand up for your friends, you know? Naruto nodded in agreement. Kiba's sentiment was something he fully understood and shared. A minute passed in silence, each genin on the balcony reflecting on his or her own thoughts before Hinata spoke again. Is it true what Sasuke-kun said though? The blonde turned to the dark-haired Hyuga with a questioning look. He said that Sakura-chan didn't make the cut. Did she get dropped from being a shinobi because wasn't good enough? From her uneasy body language and hesitant way of speaking, Naruto could tell that she was nervous about offending him with the question. He shook his head firmly as he opened his mouth to answer. That wasn't how it was. Sakura wasn't the best fighter on the team, but she's smarter than Shino or I am, and really good with first aid and some other stuff too. When you count everything together, she's as qualified to be a ninja as anyone else. Our sensei gave her the choice of leaving the team voluntarily to go into advanced medical training, and she took it. Both Shino and I support her choice. Hinata nodded in understanding, her body language relaxing at her relief that the blonde hadn't taken offense at her question. I should go find Sasuke, I need to talk to him too, Naruto said as he pushed himself away from the wall he had been leaning on. Try the forest in the back, Kiba suggested. He's probably off training again, it's pretty much all he does ever since we came back from our first C rank. I don't remember him having the Sharingan before graduation, is that when he got it? Naruto asked the dog user. Shinobi Academy classes covered the special abilities of Konoha's various clans, but only in very general terms. He was curious to know more about the Uchiha bloodline's signature. Kiba nodded. Our team was sent to guard Fire Country's northern border, and it turns out there's some upstart new hidden village there. During one of the night patrols we got separated from each other. While he was alone, Sasuke found and drove back a pair of Chunin-level ninja from that new village who were trying to sneak across the border, and that's when he got the Sharingan. Apparently it doesn't activate until an Uchiha is in a life or death situation. What does it do? He hasn't been really clear, Kiba answered with a shrug. I guess he isn't too sure himself since he's figuring it out as he goes along. Something about being able to see chakra well enough to copy once he sees them being done. Copying that sounds useful. Naruto said. He actually thought it sounded cheap, like the learning ninjutsu version of cheating off someone else during a test. But he had come to apologize and didn't want to start another fight by insulting the bloodline ability of Kiba and Hinata's teammate. The brown-haired Inuzuka chuckled. Tell me about it. Makes me wish I had one. Well, I should see if I can find Sasuke before the sun sets. Thanks for telling me where to look. Naruto waved goodbye and headed for the door back into the inn, but halted at the sound of Kiba calling his name from behind. When he turned around again, he saw that the dog user had a hand extended at him with palm open. It took him several seconds to understand what the taller boy wanted. Finally, with a slight bit of hesitation, Naruto extended his arm and clasped hands with Kiba. You're a decent guy, apologizing like that was a classy thing for you to do, Kiba asserted as he gave Naruto's hand several good shakes. It's too bad we didn't get to know each other better in the academy. So how about it, friends from now on? The blonde's mouth dropped open in surprise at the taller boy's words. Friends? Yeah, you know, friends. I guess so, Naruto replied, not really knowing what else to say. He turned his head from one side to the other quickly, his eyes darting around looking for any sign that this was really some elaborate joke being played on him. Great, the brown-haired Inuzuka declared with a broad smile as he clapped Naruto on the shoulder. It's good to make new friends, you know. Yeah, it is. After parting with Kiba and Hinata, Naruto made his way into the forest behind the inn. He stayed on the small footpath that started from the edge of the garden, figuring that Sasuke wouldn't stray too far from it. His guess was proven correct when his ears picked up a light rhythmic thumping sound less than half a mile into the forest. The blonde stepped off the path to follow the sound. A minute later he found himself approaching the edge of a small clearing in the forest. He could see Sasuke at the other end, throwing punches into the trunk of a particularly large tree at regular intervals. What do you want? The black-haired Uchiha asked as Naruto crossed a tree line and stepped into the clearing. He didn't turn around to look at the blonde and paused only long enough to deliver the question before throwing another punch into the tree in front of him. Naruto took several steps until he was near the center of the small open area. I'm just here to talk. What's there to talk about? Sasuke punctuated his question with another punch. I want to apologize for what happened before. Sasuke's fist froze halfway along the path to the tree. The Uchiha prodigy held that posture for a second before turning around, dropping his arm to his side as he did so. Apologize? What for? Sasuke asked with his eyes narrowed and his lips drawn back in a tight grin. You're sorry that I beat you like the useless nobody that you are? Naruto suppressed the flare of temper he felt at Sasuke's words. The only visible sign of his anger was a tightening of the muscles along his jawline. He was here to apologize, not to get provoked into another fight. I don't care what you think of me, the blonde said in an even tone. I came to apologize, and I've done that. No matter how much of a bastard you were trying to be, I shouldn't have taken it to the physical level. The grin faded off the black-haired Uchiha's face as he realized that Naruto wasn't going to fall for his verbal taunting again. He turned back to the large tree as he spoke. Fine, you apologized. If you have nothing else to say you can go. Naruto watched as the Uchiha prodigy settled into a ready stance to resume practicing. Technically, he had done as his sensei ordered and apologized. But he didn't feel right about leaving, it was as if the conversation was unfinished despite Sasuke's words. The blonde counted off 10 of Sasuke's punches before speaking again. "I talked to Kiba and Hinata. They told me about how the villagers treat you." The black-haired Uchiha's fist froze mid-punch again. This time, however, he didn't turn around. Instead, after a second of silence, his fist resumed its motion and slammed into the tree, producing a markedly louder impact than with his previous punches. "Kiba has a big mouth. It's none of your business," he said as he pulled his fist back for another punch. "He said it because he wanted me to understand why you act the way you do," Naruto replied. "It's not your business," Sasuke repeated, this time with a harsher edge in his voice. Each pair of words was punctuated by the sound of his fist slamming into the tree. Naruto took a few steps back and leaned against a nearby tree. It really wasn't his place to pry if the Uchiha prodigy didn't want to talk about his personal life. If he were in Sasuke's place, he wouldn't appreciate anyone trying to dig into his affairs when he wasn't inclined to talk about them. Yet he still felt like the conversation was somehow unfinished. Several minutes passed without conversation, the silence broken only by the regular thumping of the black-haired Uchiha's practice strikes against a tree. "Why do we hate each other?" Naruto finally asked. Once more Sasuke paused and turned to look at the blonde, this time with his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "What? As long as I can remember, I've never liked you. I'm pretty sure you feel the same way about me. Why? Why does it matter?" Naruto gave him a light shrug. "Humor me. You brought it up, you answered first." The blonde supposed Sasuke had a point. He considered the question for some time, reaching back into the depths of his childhood memories to find any instance where the Uchiha prodigy had wronged him in some way. He couldn't pin the source of his feelings about Sasuke to any specific event, however. I guess I was just jealous of what you had," Naruto confessed after a minute of thought. "I've never known my parents, while you came from one of the most prestigious families in the village. Things seemed to come so easily for you at the academy, while I had to struggle for everything. It didn't help that you had such an arrogant genius attitude." Sasuke chuckled, a low throaty sound that was more like a grunt or growl than a laugh. "You have no idea what being a genius means. None of you saw how hard I worked at home, so my father wouldn't be disappointed in me. I was never good enough. My father was always comparing me against." The black-haired Uchiha abruptly cut himself off. From the flow of his words, however, Naruto was pretty sure that Sasuke had been referring to his brother. The blonde decided to direct the conversation back to the original question, as he had come to apologize. There was no point deliberately provoking the other boy. "Fine. Maybe my reason was a little childish, but I was a child after all. What about you?" "What about me?" Sasuke asked. "Why do you dislike me? What does it matter?" the Uchiha prodigy countered as he turned back to the tree he had been practicing on. "You wanted me to answer the question first, and I did. Now it's your turn," the blonde replied. Sasuke shrugged dismissively without turning back to face Naruto. "It doesn't matter." "Humor me," repeated the blonde. The Uchiha prodigy looked down at where the tree trunk met earth, taking several deep breaths as he debated whether or not to answer Naruto's question. Finally, his shoulders straightened as he came to a decision. "You were the only one to ever beat me." "What?" Naruto asked with a puzzled tone of voice. "During Academy Taijutsu practice, you were the only one who ever beat me." It took a moment for the blonde to connect his memories with Sasuke's words. "You mean with the marbles, on my 10th birthday?" The black-haired Uchiha turned away from the tree to face Naruto a third time. "You beat me, and then you disappeared for months. You never gave me a chance to avenge my defeat. When you finally came back, you were so weak that it wasn't worth my time to fight you." "Well, I'm sorry that I was in the hospital in a coma for 5 months," the blonde snapped. "I guess that didn't fit your schedule. What about afterwards? I could see how hard you worked to catch up. You were climbing back up the ranks so fast in Taijutsu that I thought I would have a chance to fight you evenly at full strength before we graduated. And then you just stopped." Sasuke emphasized the last word with an angry wave of his hand before continuing. "All of a sudden your Taijutsu wasn't getting any better anymore. Then when we were spared during graduation testing, you spent the whole fight covering your face. Why? You're not vain enough to fail over hiding a scar. The only thing I could think of was that you were using it as an excuse so that I couldn't say I beat you at full strength." Naruto had no words to answer the angry Uchiha with. He couldn't tell Sasuke about his left eye, and without that there was no way to rationally explain his actions during the match. Instead, he turned his head up to look at the pale blue sky through the forest's light canopy. After a few moments contemplating how the conversation had flowed to this point, the blonde couldn't help but chuckle. "What's so funny?" Sasuke demanded angrily. "Nothing really," Naruto replied with a shrug. "It's just our reasons for hating each other are really stupid." The black-haired Uchiha was taken aback by the blonde's words. Anger and incredulity briefly counterbalanced each other before he saw the truth of Naruto's words. Once he realized how absurd their respective reasons were, a chuckle escaped from his throat as well. Soon both genin were laughing at themselves and each other. "We're idiots," Naruto declared as he wiped a tear of mirth from the corner of his eye. "Speak for yourself," Sasuke replied. There was no trace of hostility in his tone, however. Naruto scratched at the back of his head. "Since I was kind of responsible for starting everything between us with the marbles, I'll apologize for that as well. I just want you to take back what you said about Sakura." "I don't care about her or anything she does," Sasuke replied. "I only said what I did to get you worked up enough to fight me. I'll accept both of your apologies, but on one condition." "What?" "Fight me now. Give me the even match I've been waiting so long for." "I'm not at your level in Taijutsu, you know that," Naruto conceded without any hard feelings. Sasuke had always been the best in the academy, and from their small altercation in the garden the blonde could tell that he had gotten even better since graduation. "Use your sword then. It's to compensate for having one eye, right?" "How did you know?" "It wasn't hard to put two and two together," Sasuke explained. "Your Taijutsu suddenly stopped getting better, but you still seemed determined to graduate, so you had to have found some way to deal with your handicap that didn't involve Taijutsu. Then when I saw you with a sword everything fell into place." Naruto nodded in acknowledgement of the other boy's reasoning. "So I'm against your Taijutsu?" "Just like how it was during the graduation test, except it'll be fair," the Uchiha prodigy affirmed. No Sharingan, no handicaps. Just a pure fight." "Fine," the blonde replied as he started to strip his arm and leg weights off. He gave himself several minutes to adjust to moving without the weights, bouncing lightly on his feet and waving his arms in wide circles. Naruto considered using his left eye, but quickly decided against the idea. If Sasuke wasn't going to use the Sharingan, then it would be cheating of him to use both eyes. Finally Naruto picked his sword up and settled into a balanced stance at one side of the clearing. "I'm ready." Sasuke nodded and dropped into a Taijutsu stance on the other side. He kept his knees more flexed than normal so he could cover distance more quickly, and his hands were held in tight fists so his fingers wouldn't be a target for Naruto's sword. "Let's go." Once more the two genin faced off against each other in the forest clearing. The light blue afternoon sky had given way to the brilliant orange of the impending sunset over the course of an hour of sparring. Both of them were breathing heavily from their exertions, and each bore an assortment of bruises and dirtied bits of clothing. Sasuke had definitely improved since graduating from the academy, both in terms of speed and fluidity of technique. He had also eliminated his problem with starting attacks using the same sequences of movements. Naruto was pleased to find that his hard work had paid off. However, he was able to keep up with the Uchiha prodigy on both accounts. He estimated that, thanks in part to his range advantage with the sword, he was giving Sasuke 2 good hits for each he took in return. The Uchiha prodigy wasn't bothered by the way things were turning out either. Naruto supposed that it was because without the Sharingan in play, neither of them could really claim to be better than the other based on this sparring session. The blonde glanced quickly at the sky before looking back at his opponent. "We've been at this for a while, we should probably head back before it gets dark." "Let me show you one last thing first, it's a combo I've been thinking about," Sasuke replied. "Okay. Thanks for watching my video, leave a like if you enjoyed my video and also do consider subscribing to my channel for more awesome content. If you want the next part of this story, let me know in the comment box. See you next time, till then sayonara.